Fighting Eagles by Paul Warburg. This is a DTP game. That means it comes not in a box but in a plastic envelope. Everything is printed on paper, the map and the counters. You will have to mount the components by yourself. Clearly, this is not a game that you purchase for the material quality of the components. You purchase for the design, and of course there's also the advantage that because the materials are so simple, then the game doesn't cost too much. But having said that, actually I have to say that the graphics of the game are pretty good. I think that they are nice and they still do a good job in conveying the theme. Speaking about the theme, this is a two-player war game about air combat in World War I, and when you have that theme, of course, you also have the Red Baron that needs to be included. What self-respecting designer would design a game about this topic without the Red Baron making at least an appearance? And of course, when I see the Red Baron, then I also would like to see a Snoopy expansion. I'd like to see the two of them going against each other. Well, okay, but I guess I'm digressing here. In any case, let me show you how the game plays. This is the setup of the game. At the beginning of the game, the German player places a target marker in the middle of the board and 3 anti-aircraft guns in the same area. The German player also declares 3 sides of the board as friendly. The ally player will use the other side as his friendly side. The ally player adds 3 aircraft to the board on the friendly side, and then the German player adds 2 aircraft on the side that is facing that the allies are using to enter. One of the aircraft that the German player uses is that of the Red Baron. The other one is selected randomly from a pool of airplanes. And the German player will also receive a 3rd aircraft later in the game, in a later turn. This is a card-driven game that you can play using a regular deck of cards. In that case, you just have to remember what each card corresponds to. Some cards are connected to specific effects, you need to remember those. Nothing that is really hard to keep in mind, nothing too complicated. However, if for a small extra money, for a small extra investment, you can also purchase this set of small cards that are very thematic. They have nice illustrations on them, and they have been designed for this game. That means that the numbers that you see on the cards have already been modified, because if you use a standard deck of cards, you have to have the numbers, and more important than that, other reminders have been added to represent effects that certain cards may generate. For example, some cards will trigger anti-aircraft fire, some cards will call for a player to check for a gun jam. Using these cards makes playing the game even easier, even more intuitive, and I just like the way these cards look. So I think they should come as a standard component of the game, but it is up to you to add them to the game. In any case, there's a card-driven game. Each turn, the players will flip a card. The card will have a number, which may be a black number, like in this case, or a blue number. Black numbers indicate German activations. The German player can spend the number of action points indicated on the card. Blue numbers are allied activations, same thing. Aircraft, they have several values printed on them. The number that you see here is the maximum amount of action points that aircraft can spend in a turn. So even if you have more action points, you have to spread them among several units, because this is the maximum amount. And here you have the defense value. Also, there may be other indications on the unit. For example, this unit has a rotary engine, and also it has an ace pilot. I'll explain later how that comes into play. When you are spending action points on a certain unit, you can spend points to move the unit, and the amount of points that you spend is indicated on the movement diagram. From this position, an aircraft would spend 1 point to move to any of these positions, 2 points to move to any of these, and you also need to change orientation. Orientation is important. You always need to make clear on the board what is the orientation of each aircraft. Also, an aircraft could take a turn of this type, and it costs 3 movement points. Several types of aircraft may have modifications to this. Some aircraft, for example, cannot execute this maneuver here. They can move from here to here in a single move. Aircraft with a rotary engine could move to square 3 or 5 for free, 0 action point, if that is the first action point spent in the activation. Also, each aircraft needs to be at one of 5 levels of altitude, and those can be very low or very high, low or high. There's also a level which is medium, so actually average. In this case, all aircraft on the airplane on the board are the medium level, because the medium level doesn't have any marker. But suppose that here the red bar is lying low, then you just place a marker there. So you spend movement points to move, and of course you will also want to spend movement points to attack. You can attack enemies only that are right in front of the airplane that you're using to attack. You need to move before you attack, that is, you need to change elevation by at least 1 level, and of course that costs movement points, or you need to move, then you can spend an action point to attack. The range is up to 2 squares away, and to attack is pretty simple. You spend the action point that is required to attack, then you draw a card. At that point you only look at the number, not at the color, doesn't matter, and you take into account these modifiers here. For example, the position of the sun, if an ace is firing, if you're firing through the rear of the opponent, you add your action value, the action value of the airplane that is firing, you subtract the defense of the opponent, and if after you have taken into account all of the modifiers, the total that you have is higher than the defense of the opponent, then you have scored a hit, in which case you flip the opponent. If the opponent was undamaged, you flip it to the damaged side. Oh, look at that, the guy is already damaged. If you score a hit on a damaged aircraft, then of course the aircraft is simply removed. Aircraft that are flying at the low or very low level can also fire against ground targets. It is a similar procedure. You just have a different defense value, and actually one of the things that the allies are trying to do is indeed to destroy the target using strafing, and if they hit the target, they destroy it, and that's one of the things that they need to do to win the game. Also, some cards will call for anti-aircraft gun fire, and when that happens, you resolve it normally. You draw a card, you simply have a different set of modifiers. This is pretty much the basic game. The game continues for 4 turns. There is a card in the deck that will end the turn, so you do not know how much of the deck you're going to use each time. When you draw the card, you reshuffle the deck, you move to the next turn. At the end of turn 4, you assess victory. In order to win the game, the ally player needs to remove the target and to eliminate more German aircraft than the German player has eliminated allied aircraft. Any other situation, any other condition is a German win, with one exception. If the German player loses the Red Baron in the fight, then the German player can only hope for a tie, not for a full victory anymore. The rules are very short. I think it is 3-4 pages, and that includes both the rules and the scenarios. Good, short rules, not gonna take you long to read them. I did find a couple of obscure points here and there, things that I wasn't entirely sure about, but then I contacted the designer, and the designer was very helpful, very willing to answer my questions. On the other hand, probably could have just figured things out by playing the game and using common sense. I probably would have been able to figure things out empirically, but I'm just pointing it out. That's a very small thing, because in any case the game is playable out of the plastic envelope, and the game is it's simple. This is definitely an introductory level war game. There is little doubt about it. With the advantages and disadvantages that this has, it much depends on the person that will pick up this game. Hardcore grognards will rebel at the idea of a game that is so simple, but maybe even they have a mini Grognard, a young Grognard, a Grognard cub that they want to introduce to the hobby, and maybe they don't want to start them out with Advanced Squad Leader, and they may consider using a game such as this one. This is definitely something you can play with a young gamer, with non-gamers, and if you are a wargamer, a serious wargamer, maybe there is a time in which you have less than an hour, and this in that case would be a good wargame filler. You can teach it easily, it plays in less than an hour, and it is engaging to play. It is still fun to play. For what it is rewarding enough. It definitely creates moments that are exciting. You maneuver and fight for position, and your plan is coming to completion. You just need to launch your final attack, and the right card doesn't come out. But the exciting moment is before, of course, you know that. The exciting moment is when you're waiting for the right card. Card-driven, great for solitaire play. You're going to be able to surprise yourself all the time when you're playing both sides to the best of your possibilities. On the other hand, it does create huge swings of luck. Sure, in such games, if all of your cards are coming out now, you're activating all of your aircraft a lot, then the cards of the opponent are still in the deck, the opponent will get a lot of activations later. But by that time, if a player gets a lot of activations in a row, by that time the opponent may not have many forces left to really even put the activation cards to good use. There's another factor here, that is the fact that the deck most likely will be reshuffled before you go through all of it. So it may happen that one side gets a lot of cards, then the deck is reshuffled, and that side keeps getting activation cards while the other side doesn't get nearly as many. The reshuffling mechanics makes the unpredictability of the card-driven system even more relevant than it is in other types of design. This is a factor you have to be comfortable with this impact that luck may have on your experience if you are going to enjoy this game. Otherwise, I don't think that's really a game for you. I think the game may be frustrating at times. But overall, I think that this is a game that gets its job done. This is an introductory level game with some theme in it. Of course, the theme is not represented in great detail. I know, just don't write me emails and we just say, oh, the game is too generic. Of course it is generic to a certain extent, but it delivers the theme enough through these mechanics with all the advantages of a small game that you can play quickly, a game that doesn't take long to play, with all the advantages of the introductory level. I think that there is enough theme here to say that the theme is there. I've seen introductory level war games that have much less theme than this, let's put it that way. Also, air combat games have a bad reputation because they're particularly complex because of all the physics involved and the three-dimensional aspect of it. You have a way here to introduce somebody to air combat in a very simple way that is still fun to play. Again, if you're okay with the luck factor. Overall, I think that this is a good product, definitely good value for your money. It costs less than $10. It has a main scenario and several scenarios that do play differently from the main one, so the replay value is there. The card-driven aspect will add even more replayability. Definitely a good value for your money. There's a lot of gaming that you can get out of this package. Being so simple, having a semi-abstract aspect, having pretty relevant luck factor, it may not be a design for everyone, but overall I think that it is a good one. Definitely it is one that I had fun playing.